Now I'm inviting you to the anatomy lab, where we will look at the real extracted from the human body brain and discuss some of its features. Let's look at the main components of the brain. The cerebrum is the largest one. Its surface is characterized by a series of convoluted ridges separated by grooves. Each ridge here is called a gyrus, and the groove in between is a sulcus. The reason why we have all these convolutions is basically that the cortex of the brain is too large and it has to make folds to fit in. The cerebrum is divided into two cerebral hemispheres by the longitudinal fissure located in the middle of the superior surface of the brain. Between the cerebrum and cerebellum, here below, there is another fissure, the transverse cerebral fissure. Each cerebral hemisphere is subdivided into four lobes: frontal, temporal, parietal, and occipital, by deep sulci, such as the lateral sulcus, central sulcus, and the parietal occipital sulcus. The central sulcus is an important landmark, and it demarcates the primary motor precentral gyrus from the primary sensory postcentral gyrus. The efferent neurons that control all body movements are resting here in the precentral gyrus, while the afferent neurons processing all somatic sensory information make the cortex of the postcentral gyrus. The cortical neurons of the temporal lobe are associated with the analysis of sounds, and they receive information from the receptors of the inner ear. The occipital lobe houses the primary cortical centers of vision. The cortex of the parietal lobe is responsible for the space orientation and focusing of attention, while the thoughts-producing cortical area is covering the lower surface of the frontal lobe here. The diencephalon lies deep in the brain between the cerebrum and the brainstem. It is composed of the thalamus and hypothalamus. On the sagittal cut, the thalamus appears as an oval protrusion in the middle of the cerebral hemisphere that bounds the third ventricle. Here. Anatomically, it is a nuclear complex with numerous connections. It has multiple functions, generally believed to act as a relay station or hub, relaying information between different subcortical areas and the cerebral cortex. The hypothalamus is located below the thalamus and is made by numerous nuclei with highly specialized functions. The major function of the hypothalamus is to maintain the homeostasis of our body. The autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic, and the pituitary gland, a master gland of our body, are the tools of the hypothalamus. With their help, the hypothalamus controls the body temperature, hunger, feelings of being full up after eating, blood pressure, and levels of all hormones in the circulation. Interestingly to mention is that this evolutionary oldest part of the brain does not report to the cortex, and we are not aware of what exactly is going on in our body, but sending signals to the limbic system, it influences our desires, thoughts, and feelings. The cerebellum is divided into two lobes and is located posterior and inferior to the occipital and parietal lobes of the cerebrum. At the level of gross anatomy, the cerebellum consists of a tightly folded layers of cortex with white matter and 4 deep cerebellar nuclei underneath. The cerebellum receives sensory input from the vestibular apparatus in the middle ear and from muscles. The cerebellum coordinates balance, equilibrium, and smooth movements of the skeletal muscular system. The brainstem is composed of the midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. It contains the nuclei of the cranial nerves, nerve tracts that travel to and from the cerebral cortex, and centers that regulate the respiratory and circulatory systems. 10 out of 12 cranial nerves leave the brainstem or come to synapse on the nuclei hidden inside. The cranial nerves are bundles of sensory or motor fibers that innervate muscles, skin, or glands in the forehead and face regions. These nerves are called cranial because they emerge through the foramen or fissure in the skull base, but they are part of the peripheral nervous system. The cranial nerves are enumerated from 1 to 12 and have their proper names. The names usually show the function of the nerve. So the first nerve is the olfactory nerve, number 1. Here, just behind, we have the optic nerve. Next one, number 3, is the ocular motor nerve. The trochlear nerve is the nerve number 4. The 5th nerve is the trigeminal nerve. Here it is. The abducent nerve is the nerve number 6. Facial, number 7, and vestibulocochlear, number 8, are located here in the lateral side. And below here we have the group of nerves, nerve fibers, which make the cranial nerves number 9, 10, and 11. The glossopharyngeal, vagus, and accessory. And a little bit in front here, we have the rootlets of the cranial nerve number 12, the hypoglossal nerve.